Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is MagMongoSlade, and today you're going to learn something that you probably already knew. TNA is not profitable, but they are hopeful. So John Wall Street does a conversation with Carlos Silva, who is the president of Anthem Sports and is running TNA. So this is a really long article. I'm going to go through it a little bit at a time. So Carlos Silva mentions that WWE has been aiding TNA, and this has been a tremendous boon to TNA in terms of their business. Carlos Silva says, quote, "We are regularly being featured on every major WWE and NXT platform, PLEs, as well as weekly programming on the CW and other broadcast outlets like Peacock. This has resulted in huge television audience lift for us, along with the social media support we get from them." And then John Wall Street says, WWE's owned and operated channels have published over 1,000 posts referencing TNA wrestling and or one of its stars this year. Blinkfire Analytics reports that those entries have generated more than 205 million impressions, worth more than $5.3 million in earned media value. That's tremendous. Now, all these people who have been crying and complaining, belly aching and rolling around on the floor, WWE has increased TNA's visibility multiple fold. That's tremendous. They're making money off of social media now. People are actually watching these silly, cringe Joe Hendry matches that everybody hates, and they're actually raising the profile of WWE and TNA. So they continue by saying, the unprecedented alliance has the competing promotions sharing wrestlers and storylines. TNA star Joe Hendry, for example, participated in the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania and took on NXT champion Trick Williams at Battleground 2025. Carlos Silva says, the tie-up has been massive for us. It elevates our brand and brings new fans to the promotion. Blinkfire reports that TNA added nearly 1.1 million new followers to its social media channels in the first 5 months of 2025, more than twice as many as it added over the last 5 of the last year. That's a weird phrasing. More than twice as many as it added over the last 5 of last year. I guess it means over the last 5 years. I'm guessing that's what it meant. Continuing, says the next step is TNA maturation, is finding a new television partner. The promotion's weekly show, TNA Impact, currently airs on Access TV. And Carlos Silva says, usually when we're live, we're doing around 100,000 household viewers. And that figure is up from less than 50,000 in first quarter 2024. They're doubling what they were doing live on television. Then John Wall Street says, while Impact is the highest rated program on the network, it doesn't belong there. Access TV isn't in the sports business. Well, damn, all you need to do is look at Access TV and you would have known that. For starters, the goddamn channel doesn't have any reach. There's no reach in Access. It's like routinely like the number 95 channel on the top 100 channels or something like that. It's really garbage tier. And then when you look at the network, it's a lot of old rock stars hosting shows about old rock stars. It's nothing on that channel is worth talking about. Nothing on that network is worth discussing. If Impact wasn't on it, nobody would even know it existed. If we're being honest, they absolutely need to be on a new network. Absolutely. The problem is Anthem owns Access. How are they going to get around this? So they said Access TV is in around 30 million households. Carlos Silva says a weekly number of 250,000 to 500,000 in terms of Nielsen-esque P2 households is perfectly realistic on a network that is a good fit in about 40 or 50 million homes. So they need a much larger reach, and they feel they'll get about 500,000 viewers, which is a little less than what AEW currently gets. Remember, AEW's most recent show did like 580 some odd thousand viewers. This is way down from the 700,000 they did like 2 weeks ago. Okay, so they feel like they could get comparable ratings to AEW. In a sense, of course, their maximum would be one of AEW's minimums if they were on a stronger network. They need a network that is about 40 to 50 million homes to get there, but Access only has about 30. When it comes to their TV deal, they're looking for about $10 million a year. They also mentioned in this article that sponsorships has been the number 2 way for TNA to make money, and that they have some pretty good deals with Zonify and BioFlex. And their live event business is actually what makes them the most money. This is interesting because it's the exact opposite for WWE and AEW. WWE makes most of its money off of its TV deals like Netflix and USA. And AEW makes the most money off of their television deal with Warner Brothers. So TNA has a very weak television deal, and their prime business is selling tickets. Now it says TNA is a live event business at its core, so ticket sales and merchandising also generate meaningful revenue. The promotion is regularly drawing 2,000 to 2,500 fans at an average ticket price of $50 to $60. Now, let's just do some math. If we assume that they sell 2,500 seats at $60 a piece, which they don't, then that would be $150,000 per show. But they certainly don't sell that many tickets for every taping, and certainly not at that price. So how many tickets are they selling on average? That's what I want to know. But Carlos Silva is, at the same time, while he's trying to grow TNA, he's also trying to grow overall Anthem Sports Group, the entire catalog, which includes Invicta, which is a women's MMA league, which is a joke. Who the hell wants to watch a women's MMA league? In any event, TNA is not profitable. Jeff Jarrett made the claim on his podcast that TNA became profitable the moment they got the deal on Spike TV. So for those years, they were profitable. I question. I mean, those would be the years that would be the most profitable if, you're talking about money made. And since they didn't tour a lot at that time, it's believable that TNA may have made a profit during the Spike years. But the Spike years were 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. So that means for the last decade, TNA has probably been running on nothing but fumes and hopes. This cannot continue. And Carlos Silva doing this interview with John Wall Street and actually sort of opening up the books a little bit, saying this is what we're looking for, this is what we got going on. It's sort of a desperate attempt to get people to rally around TNA, to get somebody out there to throw them a life jacket. Anthem bought TNA in 2017. This was 3 years after the Spike deal was over. I don't believe TNA has been profitable since then, since Spike. It was believable that they were making a profit under Spike TV, but they spent years operating with no profit since 2015, 2016, and Anthem bought TNA in 2017, and you can't tell me that they have made a profit. I don't believe it. TNA has been in business for 23 years, and the only time it's been profitable is those 9 years that it was on Spike. I'm surprised the company is still operating right now. But that just goes to show that Anthem still has some faith in TNA. Otherwise, they'd have pulled the plug on it by now, right? They're trying different things, partnering up with AEW, partnering up with AAA, partnering up with WWE, anything to keep the company going. Where they could have folded this company 4 or 5 years ago. Most people wouldn't have gave a shit. and it'd have been in somebody's shelf. It could be a fucking spot on the WWE network, or, you know, behind a paywall after Tony Condon purchased it. They're actually trying to do something. They're trying to grow this business. And I appreciate that, because it reminds me a lot of William Corgan, who is doing the same thing with the NWA. As much as people are saying NWA is trash, you need to just go ahead and get rid of it, pull the plug on it, he's fighting for the company. He wants the company to stay alive. He wants the company to be profitable. He wants the company to be independent. And TNA is like, well, we can't do it independently. WWE is helping, but shit, we need a new TV network. We need a better TV deal. We need to go live 52 weeks a year. They're looking at this thing and saying, we need to turn business around. What do we need to do? And they're just putting it out there, hoping that somebody will throw them a life jacket and say, you only need $10 million a year to keep running? Okay, and you think you can do 500,000 viewers a week? All right, challenge accepted. And somebody to throw you that life jacket and pull TNA out of the rough waters that they're in. Because I don't see this lasting much longer. This screams of desperation from Carlos Silva and Anthem. TNA has been very protective over their business over the last several years. Even when Dixie was running the place, they were pretty under the wing about how much money they made and all that. Very private. Very, very private. So for Carlos Silva to go out there, do an interview, say, we need all of this stuff. This is what we need. We're just going to lay our cards on the table, and hopefully somebody comes along and chooses to invest in us. It screams of desperation that they're not sure what else they can do. And in terms of the death of TNA, the fat lady ain't singing, but she's drinking lemon tea in a corner, and she's patting the mic. You know, sound check. I think TNA, if they don't get a deal within the next 2 years, I don't think TNA lasts the next 5 years. I think Anthem has gotten to the end point. And Carlos Silva even talked about taking Anthem Sports and spinning it off into its own package. They're desperate. They're trying to get something moving here with TNA. And I know part of this has got to be the fact that they know cable is over with, and that cable is done for, and that Access is not going to survive much longer either. So they're trying to get TNA off of that sinking ship and onto something else, and making these wild promises about 300,000 to 500,000 viewers. That's a lot, but they're asking for a lot. You know, $10 million a year, they're asking for a lot. Hopefully they can get it, because I do want to see TNA continue, and I want one day for TNA to be able to go back to being independent, so that people won't bitch and complain about, oh, NXT and blah blah blah. I want TNA to be independent, so that they won't be the little spoon in these relationships anymore. That they can be a competent third party in the wrestling business. That's what I want. But who is going to invest in them? Who has the money? Who has the platform? Who has a streaming service where they can actually reach these goals that they've put out there, that they say that they can reach? Because Apple's streaming service is not great. Amazon's streaming service, a lot of people have it, but I haven't heard rave reviews about it. People are barely watching Raw on Netflix, and people are barely watching Dynamite on Max. I know that Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer are trying to get you to believe 500,000 people watch Dynamite on Max. It's not true. All right, it's not true. Their business would look so much different if it was. So, who can help TNA? Who can save TNA? Will it be CBS or something like that? Who knows? But I appreciate that Carlos Silva is getting out there, at least doing one interview and saying, we need some help, y'all. This is what we're trying to do. And I think being honest helps the fans, because now the fans can be realistic and not run with this incredible narrative that they're the number 2 wrestling promotion. They're not even profitable. TNA probably hasn't made money in almost 10 years. They're fucked. But they're honest about being fucked. And they're saying this is what we can do if we had more money. And it's true. If they had more money and they had a better platform, they'd get more viewers. That's obvious. TNA still has fans. The issue here is they don't have a platform. But there's also not a lot of companies out there willing to give it to them. So who knows? Maybe they'll land on like Comedy Central or something. Maybe FXX or Sci-Fi or something will try to help them out. Actually, I saw somebody joke about that TNA could go to Sci-Fi. You know? Who knows? But TNA needs some help. And them not being profitable is really not funny. Because they're making they have a pretty big legacy in the business. And it would suck for that stuff to just be swept up and purchased by WWE. Just another part of the Infinity Stone on Stanford's gauntlet. Let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.